When I say lead, I don't mean you have to be like the CEO of a big corporation. I mean, even just like leading in your life, leading in your family, leading in it could be in your career or in your job, but it doesn't have to be. Welcome to Life and Love by Design. I'm life and relationship coach Odette Coronel. This podcast is for individuals and couples who are done living on autopilot, who are ready to understand the patterns shaping their relationships, their choices, and their sense of self, and redesign them with purpose and intention. Here, we don't just talk about what's hard. We name what's actually happening beneath it and what to do about it. And if you start recognizing yourself or your relationship in these conversations, know that this is the exact work that I do with my private coaching clients, individuals and couples who are ready for real change. Because a meaningful life and connected relationships don't happen by default. They're designed. So let's begin. Welcome back to Life and Love by Design. I'm your host, Odette Coronel, and today we're talking about how to lead powerfully through vulnerability. So many women have been taught that power means having it all together. It's being composed, it's being impressive, and having all of the answers. And, especially as high achieving women, we learn very early that in order to be respected, we have to be polished, we have to be productive, and we have to be totally in control. But what if that version of power is exactly what's keeping us disconnected? And I've had to learn this lesson for myself, especially as I started going into podcasting, and it's required so much more of being seen and being vulnerable. So, in order to have this conversation, I wanted to invite someone who I think is a wonderful example of leading powerfully through vulnerability. So, I'm having this conversation with Lindsay Dotzlaff. Lindsay Dotzlaff is a business mentor and host of a top-rated podcast. She's spent nearly a decade helping coaches build practices rooted in who they actually are. And she's known for leading with vulnerability in a space that often rewards polish over honesty. And she believes that the thing you keep trying to change about yourself is actually your greatest asset. So, Lindsay, I'm so happy to have you here.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. And, I want to get started. I always like to start with something light. So please tell me, when you are not coaching or you're not leading powerfully, what do you like to spend your time doing? What are some of the things that you're doing when you're not working?
I love to travel. So, but I mean, that's like the big
Yeah.
commitment answer. I love to travel. Who
Yeah.
doesn't, I think.
Hmm.
I have two teenage daughters, so I spend a lot of time, I wish I could say I spend a lot of time hanging with them and having so much fun, but really I just spend a lot of time driving them around to any place they need to be.
Yeah.
And I love a glass of Cabernet, and I love just like sitting with my husband, maybe having a glass of wine, and by the fire when it's cold.
All of those things as well. So like we have to hang out one day because I love traveling. I love Cabernet.
Hmm.
And I've got three kids, but they're all older, so I don't have to chauffeur them around anymore. But I remember those days.
I do
Really
have a
keep.
16-year-old, so it's coming to an end. She'll
Yeah.
have her license very soon.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Hmm. Definitely.
So let's talk about vulnerability because it gets used so often. I know I use that word all the time with my clients, and you hear it all the time. But people usually think, if I'm vulnerable, that means that I'm weak.
Mm.
And especially when it comes to leadership, because we look to our leaders and often people assume, their life is perfect or they're so successful because they have it all figured out or they have it all together. And if we let people know what's really going on in our lives, then we're not going to be viewed as leaders.
Hmm.
So one thing that I love about you and the reason why I invited you on the podcast is because, I'm in your mastermind and I get your emails and your newsletter and I just crack up half the time when I read them because I'm like, she's so transparent. She's so, real. And I admire that. I feel like it takes so much courage. And I think the last one that you sent, I was like, I love this. Like you need to come on my podcast and we need to have a conversation about this,
Hmm.
you know? So when you think about vulnerability and leadership, like what does that mean to you actually?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, I don't know if this is like what it means or like the definition, but just when I think about it or my experience of it is that the more kind of open and transparent I am, the easier it is to just really show up as like, who am I today? And with no mask on, with no, not trying to cover anything up. And at least for me, it's like the weight of trying to hide things or trying to be a different person or trying to, edit myself to fit into what I think someone else, the box someone else wants me to be in or that I perceive that they want me to be in, the harder it is to lead, really, the harder it is to have a clear mind and to just keep moving forward and keep doing the thing because that just really, at least for me, that just clouds up so much of my thinking and my kind of decision making.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability. She says it sounds like truth and it feels like courage.
Mm-hmm.
And that really resonates with me because everything that you just described, I feel like it takes a certain amount of courage to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think it's one thing showing up vulnerably in certain spaces, but where places like social media and your marketing and things like that, where typically people are coming to you for answers, I feel like there's a different expectation there, at least in my experience. And I may be totally wrong. I mean, I'm probably overthinking it, but that's just kind of like how I view it and how I experience it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think, like, how did you get the courage to decide to, you know what, I'm just gonna put it all out there. I'm just gonna be vulnerable.
That's a great question. I mean, I think I could give I feel like 50 different answers for this. I think partially like, let's go back to when I was 5.
Yeah,
um,
it
but
all
no,
started back in the
yeah,
day.
right. Here's my life story. But for real, when I was younger, I went to, I think, 9 different elementary schools, but I had a single mom most of the time at least, and like on and off. And so we moved a lot. We moved maybe for her job. And there was this thing that happened when I was younger that was a little bit, I think people go in one of two ways. They either like hide and kind of close off in that situation, or for me, just the discomfort of trying to fit in and trying to be whoever that new environment wanted me to be was just kind of exhausting. And so there's that piece where it's like, I think partially I just learned it when I was younger. And then I think the rest of it has just been a work in progress. One of the biggest things I've noticed over the years, especially on social media or showing up, in a place where I'm anywhere where I'm talking to a bigger group of people, not necessarily like in person, but like on social media or just putting a message just out into the world and who knows who's going to see it. I think one of the hardest lessons I've learned is that people are going to have an opinion either way, right? Because one of the things that you said that I just like took note of was like, something about like you think people want you to show up what like polished or perfectly or something like that. And yes, some people do. And in my experience in the past, when I have tried to show up a little more like that, first it was just uncomfortable for me, but then there was also a little bit of backlash around of like the opposite, like, oh,
Mm.
she's closed off, she's not showing who she really is, she's fake, like, stuff like that. So to me, it's like you can't win either way. So you might as well just be who you are and you know put it out there. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
just show up authentically, pretty much,
Hmm.
and honestly.
Yeah, because I think if I know I'm going to get pushback either way,
Mm.
then I might as well get pushback for who I really am versus me trying to be someone I'm not. Because that's a lot harder to, kind of come to terms with in your head or to like rectify, like, wait, well, why was I even doing that to begin with when I can just show up and be me? And I think it's been one of the hardest things for me to learn, but like people just get to be wrong about me or get to decide whatever they want about me. It's still a work in progress, but it's
Mhm.
definitely probably been one of the biggest things I've learned from running a business.
Yeah, that's interesting because you're right. People are going to have an opinion about you either way, whether you
Hmm.
show up vulnerably or you show up super polished. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. And so, who do you, because when we show up, right? And by show up, I mean just sharing what's happening, whether it's with, our audience on social media or a newsletter or wherever it may be.
Hmm.
How do we decide what is important to be vulnerable about? Because I feel like there's so many things are true at the same time. Like
Yes.
in one day we can have something amazing happen, and in that same day something awful can happen.
Hmm.
So how do we decide which part is relevant to our audience or is important for them to hear, or how do you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a right answer to that, but for me, I think the biggest thing is like, is this what I'm about to share? Is this going to maybe help someone? Is this something that I see many people talking about? If it's not, then that definitely is like yeah, it doesn't really matter how uncomfortable it is for me, like it must be shared. I also have like lines, of course, that I don't cross, where it's like I'm only always share about myself. I never share about clients, or definitely not clients, and I never share really about my family and business that's like not mine, right? Like I don't really talk about my
Right.
husband or my kids all that often. um, it's usually just through the lens of like, here's something I'm experiencing. And I think over the years, after coaching, I had a program, and now I have a membership where I've worked with just hundreds of coaches, and just hearing the things that they say over and over, that is has some sort of flavor like, I I'm the only one experiencing this. Like that's kind of what they're thinking. And
Right.
I just think like, if I can poke holes in that, it's so valuable for them to just know like, oh no, actually so many people are experiencing this. So many even experienced coaches, successful coaches, like maybe they're not talking about it, or at least you're not seeing them talk about it, but they're certainly experiencing the hard things, so that, you know, the people in my world don't think like, oh, they're just broken, or like there's just something wrong with them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I was just coaching someone the other day who was actually having this same issues. She was feeling so frustrated in her relationship, and she felt like she was the only one.
Hmm.
And then it kind of morphed into then her work and all of that, and she just kind of felt like a failure
Yeah.
just all around. And she kept pointing to people that she follows on social media or that she knows in her life and thinking like, why can't I be like them?
Hmm.
But the reality is, you have no idea what's going on in those people's lives. They're
Yes.
just showing you glimpses of their lives, and they're very, filtered and highlighted and, you know, handpicked moments of their lives. You don't know what's happening. So then that creates so much loneliness
Yeah,
for people and so much
definitely.
pressure. And it's just so much fear underneath that. And it's really a lot to carry.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot to carry, and it brings up that loneliness and also shame
Hmm.
when you're just focused on perfection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
One thing I might say that, like, for your listeners, one thing that might be helpful to consider, especially when you're following people that are, that you might think of as like influencers, or like experts in certain spaces, or not just like your family members who are maybe posting photos of their kids or something, right? But people that are on social media for a reason other than that. I find it very hard personally to be as vulnerable on social media, not because I'm afraid of what people might say, or because of nothing to do with that, because it feels hard to be vulnerable, but more just the social media itself. Like if I'm on social media, I'm usually oftentimes I'm putting together a graphic for a something I'm promoting, right? Something I have coming
mhm.
up. And I am personally, I'm just not one to just like hop on and go live all the time and just talk, because that's just
Hmm.
not because I'm scared to do it. It's
Right.
just
It's just not your
not
personality
my
or
thing.
your.
And so I think that's just something to keep in mind, is like, I don't think everyone is just trying to have a highlight reel on social media. I think
Hmm.
sometimes it's just like the nature of social media, depending on how you show up for it.
Hmm.
It can just be how it looks. And and there's often so many messy things going on in their lives that also almost doesn't make sense to share a lot of times on
Hmm.
social media, right? Like there are things that happen in my life all the time that if I was just sharing all of it always, people would be like, "What? Why?
We don't
Like,
need to know that.
why do we care, right? Like, what does
We
this have
don't
to
care
do
about
with
that.
whatever?"
Yeah.
So it's just something I just think about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. what about the connection between like being in control, or the concept of being in control? We've, as women especially, we're taught, you've got to control your emotions, you've got to control, your image, your appearance, control, how much people know about you or how you're perceived. It's about control, right? And we become people pleasers, we become perfectionists, all of that. Where do
Hmm.
you think vulnerability, like, and not just vulnerability, but the value of being able to lead? I think that this is the point that I like want to stress to people that are listening. And when I say lead, I don't mean you have to be like the CEO of a big corporation. I mean even just like leading in your life, leading in your family, leading in your, it could be in your career or in your job, but just it doesn't have to be. It could be leading, as a mom even, right? So
And
how do you,
I think everyone has the capacity to lead in some
yeah.
way, even like
Hmm.
being a leader, I'm going to say in quotes, in like your friend group or your social circle or your, I
Hmm.
think we're all leaders in some form,
Hmm.
whether, someone listening might think like, oh, I wouldn't consider myself a leader. I would just challenge them to think that they are
Hmm.
somewhere. Like, where is that?
Yeah. You just brought something when you mentioned, like even in your friend group or whatever. I have a one of my mentors is she always says the opposite of fitting in is belonging.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we're trying to fit in, that's when we're not real, we're not authentic, we're kind of changing ourselves in order to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
But when you belong, when you truly belong, you could just show up as yourself.
Yeah.
You can be vulnerable. You can be real. You can be happy. You could just be yourself. And I think that that's the point.
Yeah. I think that honestly, like going back to what I said about when I was younger, I think that I couldn't have had those words obviously at that point,
Hmm.
but that is the lesson I learned, I think, is just the more just me I was, first, the more I then kind of, what, attracted, I guess, if that's the word we use, like attracted people who were like me and who liked me for
Hmm.
who I was. And that was just a lot more fun, right? To have
Hmm.
them as friends than to try to fit into some specific group or some specific, I don't know. I don't know what you call it in elementary school, like clique or something. And yeah, it was like a hard lesson, I think, but I feel like I just learned it over and over
And over
and
again.
over. And I
Yeah.
just was like, here I am, just take it or leave it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exhausting when you're just trying to fit in and trying to be liked and trying to get people to want to include you. And it's just it's there's a saying in Spanish that Cubans we use, you're better off being alone than in bad company. And
Mm,
when you could just be yourself, like you feel more at peace, even if you're alone,
mm-hmm.
rather than being around people that, they won't accept you for who you are pretty much.
Yes.
Or you
Yeah,
have
I
to be
think
someone else to be
there,
accepted. Yeah.
that's a side of it too, right? Where it's like, I think some of the work I've done is also just being fine, like loving kind of being by myself and the like self leadership, I think ties in here too, where it's like if I
Mm.
just decide I'm always the leader of me, no matter what other people are saying or
Mhm.
thinking or whatever. If I have me, then like I'm good, and not that that means it doesn't sometimes feel really hard or feel scary or feel or that I'm always getting it right or being perfect at it, but
Mhm.
certainly there's that piece that's like I think I've also just learned like it's fine to just be like I'm the person who can like go I would probably like go on vacation by myself or go to dinner. I
Mm.
definitely would go to dinner by myself. I've done it.
Mhm.
And like just I enjoy that too. Like that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
It's getting back to, when you're not wearing that armor, again,
Mhm.
going back to like what Brene Brown talks about. She talks about the armor that we put on, that we
Mhm.
carry to protect ourselves from vulnerability. And when you put aside that armor, then you get to know yourself for the first time. I
Mhm.
see that in so many of the women that I work with that are maybe like in their 40s or 50s maybe, and all of a sudden, they've their entire lives they've been people pleasing. They've been perfect. They've been making sure that, everything looks perfect in their careers or with their kids or with their partner. And at this age, you're like, wait a minute. I don't want to wear this armor anymore. It's kind
Mhm.
of heavy, and you finally take it off and you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yep.
So there's a whole journey to kind of getting to know, what do I like? What do I need? What are my values? What aligns with me?
Yes.
And you go into that whole journey, really.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I will say, I've so far been talking about mostly like friendships and peers and clients and people in my life now, but where I definitely wore a lot of armor for many years was actually in dating and that type of
Mhm.
relationship where I was just like, well, I'm not going to get hurt. So
Oh, yeah.
I'll put on all this armor to just be sure that no one gets in. And I remember my now husband, we've been married for almost 21 years. He at one point said, like when we were, I don't know if we were technically dating, but we were hanging out often. We were great friends. And then it kind of like slowly transitioned into dating. And he said, I don't think I've ever seen you cry. And I so proudly said, oh, I don't cry.
Hmm.
And it's just so funny to think about that now because
Yeah,
now
like
it's
it's a
like,
badge of honor.
it's,
No,
oh, it
I'm
was
strong. I don't cry.
100%. It was a badge of honor. Like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? I don't cry. Like, that's ridiculous. Now I'll cry. And like, my kids are like, what is happening? Like, I'll cry watching, I don't know, like when someone does a great job at
Hmm.
something, like,
Hmm.
I don't watch them regularly, but what is it? Like America's Got Talent or something,
Oh,
right? Where it's
right.
just like
Yeah.
an incredible singer. I'm like crying. My kids are
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? The point is you cry when you feel like crying. You
Yes.
don't try to suppress it or hold it in. You feel like crying. You got to feel emotional and you're connect to that emotion and
Yes.
you'll allow yourself to cry because that's what comes up for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's the point. And in dating or even in even in marriage, even people that are already married, they're still
Mm-hmm.
they see vulnerable as a weakness or a weapon because
Mm,
it's true in relationships. I see it
absolutely.
often. I work with individuals and but I also work with couples and that vulnerability can be weaponized against you.
Absolutely.
So that's where it takes, in my perspective, where it takes courage to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
to know it might not be received the way you hope it will be received,
Yep.
but it's still important to honor yourself. Like you're not doing it for your partner, you're doing it for yourself to honor your own truth
Mm-hmm.
and yourself. But there's always the risk, right? When we love, when we care about
Yeah.
people, there's that risk that we might be rejected. We may not be loved the way that we need to be loved or that we want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where
Definitely.
it takes so much courage. If you're doing all the right things, you're showing up, you're holding it together, you're being capable and responsible, and yet something in your life and relationships or your marriage still feels off, then give me a few seconds of your time because this message is for you. Relationships don't usually fall apart because of one big event. More often, it's the small everyday moments when we stop being intentional, or we stop really listening, or we stop choosing connection. Those are the things that create distance over time. I work with thoughtful, high functioning individuals and couples who aren't broken, but they're feeling disconnected or misaligned or just wondering how they got here. In my coaching, we slow things down. We try to understand what's happening beneath the surface. We identify the patterns that are shaping your relationships and your choices, and then we intentionally design what comes next. So if you're listening and you're thinking, this feels like me, that's not an accident. I offer a complimentary relationship and life alignment audit. It's a focused 45-minute conversation where I'm going to help you gain clarity and identify what comes next. You can book your session by visiting odettecoronel.com. I would love to connect with you.
Yes. Yeah, my husband, I mean, just full transparency, my husband and I have been in couples therapy recently, just like a touch up, right? Like I said we've been married 21
Hmm.
years, and it is weird there's this thing that happens or at least did for us where it's like we were so great at communicating. It's probably one of the biggest strengths in our marriage, but then like you raise kids and there's just a lot going on and so many distractions, and it was like do we need to I feel like we need to figure this out again, like
Hmm.
relearn how to talk
Hmm.
to each other. And so it's just maintenance, just for anyone listening. But it's been interesting watching myself in therapy resisting, like feeling some of the
Mm.
resistance come up
Okay.
to
Okay.
answering some of the questions, to
And what do
like,
you what do you think that's about?
oh, I mean, I think it goes back to, at first I think it's old patterns, right? Like I can
Right.
literally feel that like
Mm-hmm.
almost like a what I would call like a stale pattern in my body. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's there. I recognize it right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's your default.
Yep. And then I'm like, okay, I can feel myself having to make the choice, right? Of like, no, I'm just going to be open. Like, what am I even doing here if not? And so I think what brought this up for me is exactly what you just said. It's that fear of rejection, which sounds wild to say for anyone listening
Mm-hmm.
that's probably, if they haven't been married or if they're like, what do you mean? Like, how can you be married that long and have a fear of rejection? But I think when it's like the things you don't talk about often,
Mm-hmm.
there's always that fear. So
Yeah.
it's still there,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? I love that you've been married so many years and you're still willing to go for marriage therapy
Mm-hmm.
or coaching or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as actually really empowering for your relationship. I think that the strongest couples do that, and it's not because there's something wrong or like your relationship is at risk. It's really like, it's an upgrade, right? We have to upgrade ourselves. We're not the same person that we were when we got married or when you first had kids or whatever. We're constantly
Totally.
evolving and changing and growing, which is exactly what's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you need, like a software upgrade,
That's exactly
just
what it
like
feels
your
like.
app, just like your iPhone, right?
I'm like, I
Yeah.
highly recommend. Just it
Hmm.
has been amazing. And I'll also say, because I know you work with couples,
Yeah.
but the only reason we went with a therapist instead of a coach, because I highly recommend that too. I think there's so many
Hmm.
benefits to both. But because I'm a coach and he's not, and he had a little, I know so many coaches and coaches know me, and there was just
Yeah.
like a haziness there that was like
Right, right.
let's go this direction where we don't they don't know me and neither
Yeah.
of us know her and it's great. But
Yeah.
just for anyone listening, also
Yeah.
couples
Yeah,
coaching
I
can be
think that
just as
totally
powerful.
I think that totally makes sense. And because you're a coach, you will also be able to kind of fill in the gaps and
Yes,
take it and internalize it and make sense of
exactly.
it in
Yep.
just a way that's going to work perfectly for your relationship.
Yes.
So I
The
think that's
other
great.
kind of funny thing is I didn't want to be kind of analyzing the coaching
Right? Like, oh,
because I
why did she do that? I wouldn't do that.
yes, exactly. There was that little piece. I'm sure it
Right.
would have been totally fine.
Right.
For example, if I
Or
found someone that I didn't know, like a coach that neither of us knew, I was just afraid that I just didn't want there to be any distraction or any
mm,
noise around that for
mm,
for either of us or him to think like, oh,
right.
you
Yeah.
have like inside inside baseball on what we're
Hmm.
doing here.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, like, oh, I know what she's trying to do here. I
Mhm.
get it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But, when going back to what you said about how you were kind of resistant to the vulnerability, and that's interesting that you said that because that's what happens in long-term relationships and long-term marriages, and
Mhm.
that's how we lose connection. It's
Mhm.
in those tiny little ways where we decide, and you mentioned that it was a decision, like you caught yourself
Mhm.
holding back and
Yep.
then you decided, wait a minute, this is the man I love. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to do the thing. My
Yep.
relationship is worth it.
Mhm. Totally.
That's what's going to build connection. It's like we lose it in small, tiny moments where we don't reach out for each other. We choose not to be vulnerable. We
Mhm.
choose to stay in the world of logistics and responsibility. But when we just go back to it's not even about saying anything necessarily, but it's
Mhm.
just about connecting. Like that connection is what needs to really be restored. Like you
Yep.
can't have true communication. Communication is not just about the words that you're saying. It's really about connection and you feel it. You feel it emotionally. You feel it inside. It's physical connection, emotional connection,
Mhm.
and it requires vulnerability.
I will say nothing has been more attractive to me. And this is the other thing that's helped me, I think, be fully vulnerable in therapy is that my husband, who's like he's an introvert. He's like not one to like I could talk all day and I'm very open and for the most part can just talk about pretty much anything. And for him to show up and be and say things I've never heard him say before, that has been first very attractive. Second, very very helpful for me to know like okay, if this is how receiving it feels to me, then I'm just going to assume that that's how it feels for him too. And then that kind of wraps back all the way back to that very first
Mm,
question you asked me, which is like, why do I share so much with clients or my email list or whatever in my newsletter. And I think it's kind of that same thing. It's like that,
Mm,
it also gives them permission to just
mm.
be them.
Right. So you notice how it makes you feel and how you receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So then you want to give the other, whether it's your partner or your clients or whatever, the opportunity to feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. That's like when someone, has the love language of, acts of service, for example. And then if that's not your love language, you're like, no, 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 please, I'll do it myself or whatever. But really,
Oh,
like, if you
okay,
just
hold on.
let them do it, like,
That's my husband.
that's a gift.
And that's
Yeah.
me. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, no, no, I've got
No,
this. Like
I got it. I
I'm
got
good.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, let me. He wants to do all the things. This is literally something we're kind of talking about in
Hmm.
therapy, which is funny, because
Hmm.
who wouldn't want someone to do the things for them? Like,
Hmm.
what?
Yeah, yeah. But if you allow him to,
Mm-hmm.
then it's almost like a gift to him too, because he's receiving it,
Absolutely.
as love.
Yes.
I love that you shared that about your husband, because one thing that really surprised me when I started working with couples, and again, I work with individuals. I love working with individuals, but I also love working with couples. And typically, and of course, I am generalizing.
Mm-hmm.
So, the women come in and they want the coaching, they're ready to coach. They've done so much research, they've read so many books, they know so much already, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which is wonderful. I'm not knocking that. I would do the same thing. And the men, surprisingly, they come in like just as themselves, but they are so willing to be vulnerable. They, in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
they're not here showing up like, oh, I've got it all figured out and it's all her fault.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some men, maybe
Right.
some people, right?
I'm
We all
sure.
we
Yes.
all do it, right? Some men, some women do it,
Absolutely.
right? Myself included. But it's just surprising how I was really surprised how men in relationships, they are willing to, when they're one-on-one and when they know that it's their marriage at stake, the person that they really really love,
Mm-hmm.
it's worth opening up and being vulnerable and showing what's inside. It's
Mm-hmm.
worth it. So that's been like a really pleasant surprise when I have a couple like that where I see the husband is open and is
Mm-hmm.
willing to dig deep. I'm like, okay, they're going to be okay, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be
I
just
love
fine.
I love that. Yeah, it's been really fun for me to see that, honestly, because I mean, I have no doubt that he's honest with me and whatever,
Yeah.
but just that openness and openness also with a third party there. I just wasn't
Hmm.
sure how
Hmm.
into that he would be, but he has. Yeah, it's been
Hmm.
really really fun. And
Hmm.
one thing, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but when you just said, the women show up like, "Oh, I've done this work and I've done," so that's me. Like I've
Hmm.
done much therapy since I was like in high school. I have all the therapist is like, "Here, have you all should do these, answer these questions," and all stuff that I've done before, but
Yeah.
I have not said that. I have
Hmm.
like, because the thought I had going in was, well, actually, I have to attribute one of my best friends said, "Lindsay, if you go to therapy with Nate," so that's my husband's name, "you cannot go in to win."
Hmm.
And I was like, "What?" And she said, "You're going to want to like win at therapy."
Hmm.
And I was like, "What are you talking
That's so
about?"
funny.
I had to sit with it for a minute and I was like, "Yeah, she's right. That's true." I had this like, I've done the work and I've, like
Hmm.
a small just chip on my shoulder about that, and I
Hmm.
had to really like
Yeah.
fully set that down before.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's really funny though. But you know what? If you win, then who loses?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw
Yeah.
that, literally
Yeah.
that exact thing, I was like, "Oof, yeah, that
Yeah.
feels
We don't want any losers here. We're
terrible.
all
There's no
winners.
losers."
Yeah, and
No.
you want to look at it, you and your husband are on the same side. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're approaching this together.
Mm-hmm.
It's us, like we're figuring out this, Rubik's cube of
Yes.
life of our marriage
Yes.
together, which it feels so good once you get that figured out. I mean, I can't figure out a Rubik's cube. My daughter is really good at that. She could do she could do that in like 2 minutes.
One of my daughters
I've
too. I'm like,
never
"That's
been able to
crazy."
figure that out. I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. But it's amazing when you're
Mm-hmm.
done figuring out something that's been challenging or that's been difficult. And you know what? We did it together. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, that's such a bonding experience.
Mm-hmm. And I've been shocked at just this art, the smallest takeaways has they've already created so many more moments of connection and
Hmm.
just openness also like outside of the sessions
Mhm.
and just purposefully like making more time for each other and just, doing small things that I'm like, oh, right, yeah, these, I forgot all these little things add up and make such a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing to remember is we talked about the default mode that we kind of get into these patterns, and wherever you are today is a result of whatever you did 5 years ago, a year ago, and whatever you're doing right now is going to impact your future self.
Yes,
It's going to impact your marriage and your relationship 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
yes. Yeah, and if anybody, for anyone listening, I am so glad we started now versus, we have kids, one daughter in high school, one who will be in high school
Mhm.
soon. And I'm just so glad we're doing it now instead of, 4 years from now or whatever.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when it's like it's just us and we're like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
what do we do? Who are you? And even though we're in this kind of like busy season, so I think that's why I say for anybody listening, if you're like, but we're really busy now, but in, a couple of years, maybe things will slow down. I would just highly encourage to like consider coaching or some form of support in the busy season so that you don't come out of it already kind of like who are you and what's going on.
Oh my God. That is such an important point. That is so true. Oh my God. If you wait, which most people do, because
Mm-hmm.
most people
It
think,
makes sense.
why it makes sense. Why am I
Mm-hmm.
going to start coaching
I
or
said
thinking
that
about this
at
if there's
first.
nothing going on?
Mm-hmm.
But it really is, even if you have a great career that you love, even if you have your own thing, it's not just the stay-at-home mom that's like whose life has revolved around their kids that goes through a transition and that goes through that is challenging, finds it challenging when your
Yep.
kids grow up. When my daughter first started college, it was really like I was really losing my mind. Like I couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, do all parents experience this? So just that alone was so difficult, but then so many changes just start happening.
Yeah.
And right now you feel your life is very busy
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. When is this over? I can't take this.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, it's over. It literally is. And it's just different. Like not that it's just different and it's fine. It could be a very exciting time,
Mm-hmm.
and it is. But I think
Absolutely.
as we go through different transitions, there's a part of us that we leave behind and there's a part of us that we grieve.
Mm-hmm.
And even thinking about our children in a different stage of life is a little bit of grief, right? Because our kids, we've in our mind, they're the toddler version of themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing. But going back to the marriage therapy or coaching or whatever, I think that is a tremendous point. Do it before there's an issue. Just kind of set yourself up to be able to handle and manage and show up with and it vulnerably show up and deal with the emotions that are going to come.
Yeah.
But like, no, they're going to come and it's okay. I'm going to get through it and I'm going to be fine. And we're going to have each other,
Mm-hmm.
you and your husband, you're going to have each other to get through that time.
And I think it'll be so much easier to be there for each other since we're doing this work now. I hadn't considered this, but just hearing you say that, hearing you say like
Mhm.
it's hard when, I already know it's gonna be hard when my daughters leave, one of them or both of them or whatever.
Mhm.
And I hadn't considered this, but I think I'm just really happy that we're doing this now because in that state, it's a lot harder to focus on
Mhm.
something else, right? So instead, hopefully at that point, it will be more of like, oh, but we're here for each other instead of like, I don't feel connected here and my kids just left and now we have to like
Exactly.
work way harder to kind of repair or maybe repair is not the right word, but
No,
foster
just
this relationship now.
right. It's to kind of share in that load, share the load, right? We're going
Mm-hmm.
through this together. We're experiencing this together. And one of you may be feeling more emotional one day and then the other one the next because
Mm-hmm.
dads go through it too,
Yep.
believe it or not. Like it's a lot for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to kind of be a little bit proactive as you think about it and talk about it now,
Mhm.
oh my God, it could be a beautiful thing for your relationship. I mean, my husband and I travel now more than we ever did, really, and we have so much fun now because we just
Okay, I really can't wait for
don't.
that though.
No, I mean, it's not. No, things aren't perfect, and we're still. I mean, even though your kids are adults, like they will always need you, and you
Yes.
will still be busy with your kids, which is
Yep.
a great thing. But you can actually, again, upgrade your relationship, and let's do all the things that we didn't have time or money to do before. Like,
Yeah.
let's just do it,
I'm here for
So,
that. That sounds fun.
yeah.
And is that sounds way more fun and like wanting to do it with him than like let me go uh I call it like let me eat, pray, love my life, right? Like let me go just
Hmm.
like check out and be by myself and like
Hmm.
figure it out alone and then
Right. Yeah.
decide without him. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound quite as
And I
fun.
feel that women have that urge to like run away and do that eat, pray, love
Hmm.
experience because they feel disconnected from themselves and their husband. But if
Hmm.
you kind of work on maintaining that connection, you're going to want to experience the eat, pray, love with your husband.
Yeah,
And it's so much more fun that way.
I
But
love
you've
that.
you've got to do the upgrading all along in order
Hmm.
to be able to experience it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it. I love how this conversation has evolved to, like just coaching and leadership, but also family and relationships. And really, it's life.
It is. And I that it comes back to like being you're a leader whether you call yourself that or not because I really think everything we're talking about still revolves around leadership, whether it's self-leadership or leadership in your family or, whatever in your relationship. And it's just all important and all connected.
It's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected. I love it. What advice do you have for someone that might be listening right now who is listening to this conversation and thinking, that might be okay for Lindsay or that might be okay for them, but that just doesn't make sense for me because I've got to, I don't want to risk my career or I don't want to risk my relationship or I don't want to risk being seen.
Hmm.
What would you say to someone that's listening that's kind of still in that place where they want to be vulnerable, but they just don't feel that they can risk it?
Hmm. I think maybe two things. I think there's like just the like tactical advice might be to consider that you don't have to be just go from wherever you are now to just completely transparent, vulnerable, just putting everything out for the world to see. It doesn't have to happen like that. It could be like what's one place where I could maybe practice this or that I feel safe try it's weird to say trying it because it's like what specifically does that mean? I don't know, but
Hmm.
like having maybe more open conversations or just letting your guard down maybe is how some women might describe it.
Hmm.
um, and then I also think there's kind of the behind the scenes work, which is a little more of the coach in me coming out, but where one thing I've noticed is just the weight internally of like what are the things or where are the places where I feel like I am being very guarded and what's the weight of that just
Hmm.
on me and that day to day and maybe thinking about like what are the things that you think like if you ask yourself what are the things that I think I could never tell anyone or I could never most people could never know this thing about me and just get curious about like how much weight are those
Hmm.
kind of causing like behind the scenes. What would it maybe feel like to just not be carrying that anymore? And again, once you find them, you don't have to just air all the dirty laundry, although you can
Right.
if you want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But maybe like, just like practicing it. And also
Hmm.
acknowledging that in some spaces, it may not be like there might be some truth to that in some
Hmm.
arenas and some especially maybe like corporate spaces or
Hmm.
like it's not all created equal I don't think in some
Right.
ways so I think it's like knowing what might be harmful for you in
Hmm.
certain areas and don't take it to that extent but just kind of questioning like what are just little ways I can show up
Hmm.
just more as me here.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. What are small ways that I can be more open and more vulnerable and show up
Hmm.
authentically? And I think it's true. It's not always appropriate to show too much of yourself, like you said, in a boardroom or something else.
Totally.
I think that it requires so internal safety, right? You have to feel
Mm-hmm.
safe within yourself
Yep.
that, you know what, I'm going to be okay no matter what, and I've got my own back. So I think that's part of it. And I think that it there also has to be like a container, like a safe space also, right?
Yes.
Like you have to be aware, like, who am I speaking to? Which I mean, you did mention that before, like, and why is it important for me to share this and
Mm-hmm.
to be this way?
Yep.
I think that that's what's going to make it worth the risk or the discomfort of opening up and being vulnerable and risk being rejected or risk being judged.
Yes. Yep. I think safety, the words you just used were perfect. Like safety number one, right? Like being able to know you can take care of yourself and that you're in a safe situation or as best you can know that, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah,
I do
that's
think I
great.
have a little bit I don't know, maybe it's harder and easier in some ways because it's like I'm running my own business. I can kind of do what I want. There's also a big visibility factor that is maybe greater than what someone in a boardroom might have, but also I'm not like no one's in charge of my job or my
Mhm.
livelihood like I am, whereas
Mhm.
in a different situation that could just look a little different.
Right. Right. If you're in a boardroom or if you're a politician or whatever,
Yep,
they definitely don't feel safe to show up vulnerably, and they probably shouldn't.
right.
But it depends on
But I don't
on
know, in
what they
some ways
stand.
I'm like, but wouldn't it be better if
It
they
would be so
if
much
they
better.
did?
Like,
Like
I
that would be great,
wish that
actually.
they would. I wish that they would, because the way that they do show up can't be real. It can't be what's really happening.
And it has to feel so uncomfortable.
Ugh,
I actually think about this all the time. I feel like we could go down a whole rabbit hole, but
yeah.
it has to be so uncomfortable for them to just, cause like you can tell, you can feel it. Like there's
Yeah.
just a incongruency,
Yeah.
maybe not with
Mhm.
all of them, but between their kind of like public persona and probably who they are, what they believe
Mhm.
or think about themselves, about the world, about whatever, like behind closed
Mhm.
doors, and it has to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100%. That must be so uncomfortable to live that way, and to think before they even speak or show up, they have to say, okay, what is it that these people want to hear from me?
Hmm.
Literally, and that's what they're going to say,
I
which
would be
is
so bad at that
the
job.
opposite
Like,
of the opposite of authenticity and vulnerability and all of that. Yeah, I would not be able
either
to.
I'd be great at it because it would be like people would
Yeah.
be like, "Whoa, what's happening?" Like she's
Yeah.
just telling the truth. That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah,
Or
maybe you should. Maybe more people like you should, like, run for office
oh,
and,
nightmare.
be
Ugh,
a world leader, but
yep.
yeah.
No, I don't think so. I prefer to. I'll lead a different part of the world in a different way, and
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
maybe let that like soak into to
Mhm.
other spaces. Hopefully,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
we're doing here. We're changing the world.
Exactly. Yeah, we're contributing to that ripple effect
Hmm.
by just kind of changing our world.
Hmm.
Our,
And other people's, right? Like all the
and other
clients that
people's,
you
yeah,
work with. That's huge.
right. There's like a ripple effect
Yeah,
that happens. Yeah.
definitely.
Well, Lindsay, this has been an incredibly powerful and vulnerable conversation, and I've loved every minute of it. Can you just tell our listeners and our viewers, where can people connect with you, or can they follow you?
Of course. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. This is so fun. And I just was so excited when you asked me if I would do this today. And yes, they can find me probably the easiest place is Instagram. Just everything is just my name. I'm not very creative, or at least not at naming things. My name at lindsay.sloth on Instagram. Also, my website is lindsay.slothcoaching.com. And I hope to connect with some of you listening.
Great. I love it. We will put all that information in the show notes as well, so people can definitely connect with you.
Oh, and
And
I should probably say my podcast. That's actually
oh yeah, that's
the
right.
I always forget. I don't know why. It's like my number one thing, and half the time I forget to say
And you
it.
forget.
It's just mastering coaching skills. And again, if you just search my name, no one else has my name. So if you just like search my name on any of the podcast platforms, you'll find it.
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Lindsay, thanks again for being here and for the way that you lead. You're a great example to all of us. And
Thank you.
for those of you listening, I want to leave you with this. Think about where in your life are you choosing control over vulnerability? And what can you do to really start fostering more connection and vulnerability in your life? And remember, your life and your love are yours to design. If today's episode described you or your relationship, then this is your moment. You don't need more information. You need a new way of living, choosing, and relating. And that's the work I do with individuals and couples. If you're ready to stop repeating the same patterns and start designing your life and relationships intentionally, visit the link in the show notes and book a complimentary relationship and life audit. Remember, your life and your love are yours to design.